Alrighty. Okay, so let's do this. All right. So, I'm going to do that in 1 second. I know it's going to be, oh wow, okay. People are coming with the questions hard and fast. I got 2 slides to finish up for globalization, so I'm going to do this really quickly, and I'm going to come back to these questions. Okay, but keep them coming. Okay, so very quickly on globalization, just a couple of things. There's one other theory of globalization I need to talk about, which is what's called world systems theory, about how capitalism works. So this is a conflict theory approach, right? Wallerstein's a pretty hardcore Marxist at the end of the day. So basically what Wallerstein says is that you can split up the world into 3 types of countries. Those that are always wrong. There we go. Core capitalist countries. So basically the major sources of capital and technology in the world, this would be the United States and like the core states, Germany, France, and the UK of the European Union. So you've got those are your core capitalist states, the ones that are basically the most developed and basically exploit other places. Then you've got semi-peripheral capitalist countries, former colonies that are making a lot of headway in industrialization and increasingly, because Wallerstein wrote this in the 80s, post-industrialization. Here you would probably put, countries like Canada, Australia, China, India, maybe Brazil, probably Russia before the war, right? And though Russia wasn't a colony, definitely Russia was, reindustrializing and moving into that kind of post-industrial age. Some of the East Asian countries, Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea rather, would probably be in this semi-peripheral kind of state. So generally, these are the places that are doing well. They've got some industry, rising standards of living, but still not really core to the global economy. And then, you have the peripheral capitalist countries, which are basically the resource and labor bases. So places like Bangladesh, right? Bangladesh, peripheral to the global economy, but supplies a lot of labor. Vietnam, all of sub-Saharan Africa, which is mostly used for raw materials. They're all part of the global capitalist system, but they're not really core to it. Okay, so that's world systems theory in a nutshell. And then the last, I think this is my last slide. Yeah, I'll show you that one, but I won't ask any questions about it. So how prospering semi-peripheral countries differ from poor peripheral countries. The type of colonialism, settler colonial states, right? Those where they were actually taken over by a colonial power. So places like Canada and Australia in particular, and where they essentially more or less replaced the population, or the population of colonists came to outnumber the population of say, indigenous people in that place, tend to do better because they maintained closer ties and culturally they were closer to the core states. So think of how similar culturally Canada is to both the US and the UK. Why? Because basically for the longest time it was dominated by kind of British and English-speaking Canadians of British extraction. The geopolitical position, especially during the Cold War, those that aligned themselves with the West and the United States in the struggle against communism tended to do better, right? So the NATO countries, especially the older ones, have tended to do better. If you compare, say, to India, which tried to play kind of middle ground, it tried to play the Soviet Union and the US against each other, didn't do as well. It didn't develop as quickly. Same thing with China, right? China was a communist country, more aligned with the Soviet Union for a long time, and it's only in the 80s when it started to align with the US that it kind of moved into a more advantageous position. State policies, particularly state policies on development, and especially those that favored Western-style institutions, have tended to do better. So again, Canada, Australia, and other kind of former British colonies that kind of mimic, the British way of doing things were typically done pretty well, and then, or have typically done pretty well. And then the social structure, so generally those, capitalist countries that adopt kind of a similar social structure in terms of, class structure, to say the United States or the UK, with really, small elites. Defined middle classes, a working class, and poor have tended to do better as well. Okay, so I'll probably just ask more about these definitions than this on the exam. Okay, and I mean, just the last thing I'll point out for globalization, and then I'll take your questions, I promise, is that if we look at the share of global GDP produced by kind of the core states of the world, right? So if we take kind of the G7 minus Japan, right? That's the blue line. Basically, they had a larger GDP than, Brazil, China, and India. That has kind of flipped around, and now we're, talking about the BRICS as an alternate power to the G7. The BRICS now, so the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, these kind of developing economies, now their GDP exceeds that of the developed nations of the G7. So we're seeing big shifts in terms of how the distribution of global GDP as a result of globalization. Okay, now I'm going to go back to this question slide. We're going to see what you have. All right, wow, okay. We have lots of questions. Okay. Let's see. Could I explain the difference between social diversion / deviation and conflict / consensus crime? Okay, so social diversion, lowest level, right? So in our pyramid of silly hair-based things, it's the lowest level. It's a very minor social faux pas, right? So you are violating a really unimportant social norm, and you're not going to be punished for it. You might, making a lot of noise back there. You might just get a little bit of a social punishment and all of that stuff. Okay, so that's diversion, right? So that's like dyeing your hair blue, right? People might look at you funny, or getting like a tattoo, on your arm, a big tattoo. People might give you a little bit of a strange look, especially if it's like a provocative tattoo, but it's probably not going to lead to very serious consequences. Consensus crime, not consensus, I jumped right to consensus crime. Social deviation, right? A little bit more serious. It's going to have some kind of institutional repercussions. So right, on our hair-based examples, if you were a man with a ponytail in the 1960s in a high school, right, you might have been called to the principal's office and been like, okay, it's time to cut your hair, right? You're wearing a lady's hairstyle, stop doing that. It has, a little bit more, like a deviation, you're deviating from social norms a little more than just a diversion, right? So you're going to face a little bit of pushback institutionally. It's still not going to be very serious, but it is going to be there. Okay, a conflict crime. So many questions. A conflict crime is a crime that is seen as serious, particularly by the powers that be, and it's going to carry a serious punishment, but there's not total social agreement that it is a problem, right? So, I don't know. Do it like our hair-based examples is wearing a beard in 18th century Russia. That might not be the best example, but think of like, something like possession of certain drugs. There might not be, a huge institutional, like you might get convicted of a crime, but not everybody's going to agree, right? Some people might be like, it's fine for you to do cocaine, right? You should be able to do cocaine if you want. It's your body, but it's still a crime that would be punishable if you get caught. And then a consensus crime is something that basically the whole society agrees is a problem, right? So if you start molesting children, right, you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life because everyone more or less agrees that that is a crime that needs to be punished. Okay. 16 questions, 17 questions, 16 questions. This one's that one's easy. So for practice midterm, why is culture not considered a source of globalization? Culture is one of the products that globalization sells, rather than a cause of globalization. It's more about economics, the search for new markets and new profits. I'm trying to think. It's transport. Let me go back because I have it here somewhere. Doop doop doop. Because I can't remember. Politics, right? Politics was technology, right? Better forms of travel and communication, especially, and politics, right? Culture is actually one of the things that globalization sells. Okay, that was easy. I just put it up a few minutes ago, so yes, there is a midterm review video. I put it up, yeah, like maybe 20 minutes ago. I will double check that. I did not talk about learning theory, so I will double check that it doesn't, I'll try to take that question out of the practice midterm. It might have just snuck in, so I will double check that. Okay, oh, I think you mean institution. Oh, sorry, I guess I should go at the top. Okay, so these are, okay, can I re-explain the Thomas theorem? The Thomas theorem is basically the idea that if we act like something is true, and this tends to be a pretty big social phenomenon rather than individual things, that just the fact that we act like it's true ends up making it true in reality, right? Because we all act like it is true, and so it ends up having a social power. So think of the nation state, right? Your country. You know, you live in Canada. Canada is not a real thing, right? If you look at the Earth from space, there is no Canada there. There's no border that separates American from Canadian. And yet, because we all treat being Canadian as if it is something that's important, it is important, right? We treat it as important, so it becomes important, and it has an effect. We think of ourselves as Canadians, not Americans, or not something else, Russians, or pot Slovenians, or whatever it happens to be. So that's the Thomas theorem, right? When you believe something is true, whether it exists in reality or not, you sort of bring it about. You make it true. Okay, can I explain I versus me? So I is the impulsive self that's there from birth, right? That is the self that wants things, right? So we all want things from the time we're born. We want food, we want comfort, we want, to feel good. If you're my children, you want candy all the time. The me is the self that's a little bit more reflexive, that starts to see itself in relation to others, and it's established through language. Okay. Can I explain institutional mean and cultural goals? Okay, so the institutionalized means is basically the socially accepted script of how you're supposed to live your life and how you're supposed to get the things that everybody more or less wants in life. If we think about our society, right, everyone wants money, everybody wants happiness, everybody wants a career that's satisfying, maybe a family. So how do you get that, right? Well, you go to school, you get a job, you get married. Those are the institutionalized means. The cultural goals, right, just what most people want. What's the script that a society says is good? Okay. Sorry, I'm seeing which one of these is easiest to answer. Is family or mass media a more influential agent of socialization? Yes. It depends, right? It depends, like it's going to vary from person to person. They're both very influential. I would probably, if you put my feet to the fire, I would say family, because you spend most of your time there, and we all end up becoming our parents at the end of the day. I lost the question I was answering, so I'll have to get back to it and check it off. But yeah, family is probably more important. Okay, it says Canada on the image, yeah. So the image says that Canada is a core country. Wallerstein doesn't define Canada as a core country because it's a former colony. You could make the case that Canada is part of this like Anglo-American grouping of countries, that's core to the global economy. I actually think Wallerstein is more correct than that graphic. Canada is pretty peripheral, and our biggest industry remains oil and gas. We are a resource base. What is it? I mean, we're basically a gas station with maple syrup. I'm sorry to say, that's Canada in a nutshell. Okay. Russia's a gas station with nuclear weapons. Canada's a gas station with maple syrup. What can I say? Okay, family. Yeah, I would say family because you spend more time there. Media is really influential, though, especially in the teen years. Okay. Do you have to know the difference between the different types of generations? I don't think you have. I have a very specific question about the generations. It doesn't hurt to just kind of have a general, a general sense of them. But I won't ask terribly specific questions about them. What is the difference? Generational difference and age. Yeah, so generations are basically age cohorts, right? So an age cohort is just like you cluster, people of similar ages born in a range of years together for the purposes of like statistical study. A generation is basically a form of an age cohort. We've just given them, as social researchers, particular importance, right? And we've said, this age range to this age range is a kind of unified block. These are, the silents. This is the silent generation. This is the boomers. This is Gen X. This is millennials. These are Gen Z, right? And we treat them, it is a type of age cohort. We've just given them a particular name, right? An age cohort, technically, you could have like 3 years, right? You could be like, I'm interested in studying people born between 1995 and 1998, right? That wouldn't be a generational cohort. So sometimes age cohorts are a little bit smaller or bigger, but you can put them in different ways. And generations, we just have these sort of defined sets that we think are people that share a similar cultural experience that also share a certain age range. Okay. I thought I was working the questions down. Do I need to know? Okay, this one's easy. Generational cutoffs? No, I won't ask you about the dates. What does how can we write a paper version of the exam? I was going to get to that. Send me an email saying, hey, I would really like a paper version of the exam, and I will count the people who send me that, and I will print that number of exams, or slightly more in case someone decides at the last minute they want to do it. And there you go. I usually print 15 just to be safe, but it's always good to send me an email so that if there's like 25 people don't get stiffed. Okay, where did I post it? It's on. If you're on online, you won't see what I'm doing, but I know I put it somewhere, but where did I put it? I know I made it visible, but where did I go in the wrong one? I maybe went in. So I know it's there somewhere. I will find it and I will put it there because I know it's somewhere. Maybe I put it in the wrong place. Did I? Practice materials? I know it's there somewhere. I just can't find it at the moment. Okay, hang on. I'll find it. Maybe I put it in the wrong, maybe I was in the wrong SOS 100. That happens to me sometimes. I thought I made it visible, but maybe I am stupid. I will repost it just in case. Hang on. No, I'll do it after. I'll do it after class. I thought I did it, but maybe I'm dumb. I can't find it right now. So if you don't see it, I will make sure it's there. It's possible I'm stupid. Or I liberated it in a different class. I might have done it for fall 2023. Okay, let's see. What does this chapter cover? So it's socialization, deviance crime, globalization. Those three. Don't worry about race and ethnicity. We didn't get to it. It'll be on the next one. What is ritual death? Me attempting to answer all these questions. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay. So are regionalization and localization homogenizing like McDonald'sization? Less so, right? Because they each have local elements. Like localization brings local elements, say, into McDonald's. So it's kind of, in a sense, a counter argument against the homogenizing power of globalization, because even global forces have to localize, and regionalization is the same, right? Regional blocks compete globally by maintaining their own kind of uniqueness. Okay. Since I joked about ritual death, I'll take that one first. Ritual death, right, is part of a initiation ritual, and it's all about rejecting your old life. So, it might be about, rejecting the past, rejecting the former gods, rejecting your life before you joined the gang. It can look like a lot of things, but it basically marks you as having left that old world, and then you're going to go through a ritual rebirth, so marking a new one. In Christianity, right, it has the most kind of obvious representation of this. They dunk you underwater. That's a ritual drowning, and then they bring you back up. It's a ritual rebirth, right? Okay. How many questions are on the midterm? 500. No, 45, same as the first one. They're all 45. The final exam is 45 too. It's never going to change, I promise. You can trust me, kind of. Hopefully. Can I explain dependency theory? Yes. Okay, we're good. I can explain it. Oh, you want me to explain it? I gotcha. Okay, dependency theory, really easy. It's this kind of conflict theory idea. Why are countries poor? Why are countries in Africa, in Asia, poor compared to North America? Because they were exploited during colonialism, and they continue to be exploited today in different ways. Basically, it is because the West and the rich countries exploit them for resources and labor and overcharge them for finished goods. That's dependency theory in a nutshell. A rite of passage and an initiation ritual. So a rite of passage generally marks the transition from one life phase to another, right? Like a very cheesy example, you're turning 16 and you're a girl, you have a sweet 16 birthday party, or if you're, Latino, a quinceañera, when you turn 15, I think, to mark your kind of movement into womanhood, right? You're now no longer a little girl, you're a young woman. That's a rite of passage. An initiation ritual is you're joining a gang and you've got to go shoot someone or sell some drugs or break into a car or something to prove that, you go through those phases, the ritual death, ritual rejection, ritual death, ritual rebirth, and I can't remember. Integration, I think is the last one off the top of my head. But it's completely overturning your life, right? Joining a new group, starting a new kind of thing where you've rejected the past and you're coming into a new thing. So joining a cult, you have an initiation rite. A rite of passage is just moving from a life phase to another. Okay, which units are on the midterm? I just said that. Socialization, deviance and crime, globalization. Not a video. Okay, I will fix that. I thought I had put the video on there. I will fix it. Okay, yes, I addressed that already. I think a question snuck in. Don't worry about learning theory. I didn't talk about it. I mean, learning theory is really simple. Basically, how do we become social agents? We learn from the people around us. But I won't ask you a question about it. But it's a super simple concept. It's called learning theory or social learning theory. I'm almost done. Okay, what exactly does playing complex games mean in socialization? So rather than like simple games where like as a kid you take on the role of mommy or doctor or daddy or whatever, right, where you're inhabiting the role, you start to have games with multiple characters, right? So you start playing My Little Ponies and you play as all the different ponies, and yes, I can name them all. Because I had a sweet little daughter. Now she's a teenager, no longer sweet. She never takes off her headphones. It's very distressing. Anyway, you start playing as all the characters, or you start playing sports and you take on multiple different roles at different times. So that's complex games, as opposed to the simple games that younger kids play where they play a single role. Okay, self-fulfilling prophecy versus the Thomas theorem. The Thomas theorem is generally bigger and at a social level. A self-fulfilling prophecy is typically more personal, right? I think I suck at this particular class, so I didn't study, I got drunk the night before, and I failed the exam, proving my point that I suck at Sociology 100, versus we think something is true, so we make it true on a big social level. Self-fulfilling prophecy has to do with you typically versus, or the teacher says, you're dumb, and then you're like, yeah, I'm dumb, and then you get bad grades. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, the teacher says, not you're dumb, you're going to fail the test. And then you're like, yeah, if the teacher thinks I'm going to fail the test, well, then I don't study and I don't do things to pass the test, and then I don't pass the test. You're all going to pass the test. You're going to be great. Internal versus external social control. Internal, you've internalized the means of your own repression. The traffic or the intersection is empty at 3 a.m. and you sit at the red light. Why? Because you know the rule is the rule. And what if someone does see you, but you've just internalized the rules so you don't break them? Versus external social control, you don't do it because someone is going to punish you, right? So the same thing, you would run that red light, but you're sitting at the intersection and there's a cop on the other side. That's external social control, right? If you're going to be punished and you fear you might be punished by an external force, you don't do it. Internal, you've internalized the rules so you don't break them. Okay, wow, that was not as bad as I thought. All right. I will find, anyway, I'll post that video in a sec after class. I will do it in our break. And I am going to now go to the Kahoot. Okay. So and I'm sorry, I had prizes, but I left them in my office as I raced over here. So I'm really sorry. I'm having a schmozzle of a day. Oops, don't need to change that, but I need to change this. There we go. Now our online friends can participate. And I'll post the link to the Kahoot after class as well. Just be thankful that I pay for the premium version of Kahoot so 400 people can play. Okay, S3XY. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. I counted down and I didn't do anything about it. All right, I'm going to do it now. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Which of the following concepts is McDonaldization an extension of? Is it commodification, globalization, rationalization, or glocalization? This is, in fact, is part of globalization, but it is an extension of rationalization because you take those highly rational practices out of American business culture, like McDonald's, right, where everything is done in the most efficient way, and you apply it on a global scale. So it's an extension of rationalization. I took the autoplay off so I can explain the questions. All right. The following is an argument against the idea that globalization is equal to homogenization. Is it localization and regionalization, productivity and rationalization, international division of labor and international trade, or global supply chain and commodification? Wow, we just talked about this. Someone had a very good question about it. Good job, that person, for ruining my question. Thanks a lot. Yes, this is glocalization and regionalization, right? Because local characters have to be integrated for the global brand to be successful. Alrighty. None of the funny names make it. Except I guess. All right. Hurry up, we're gonna run out of time. Which of the following is the most controversial explanation for the changing crime rates in Canada? Is it the aging population, the increase in law enforcement efforts, the legalization of abortion, or the decrease in unemployment? Excuse me. Right, it is the legalization of abortion, both because the timing is a little funny, and obviously abortion itself is a little controversial. You know, if you want to say like, how should we stop crime? Let's abort all the poor people, can be kind of a controversial thing. Okay. What an example of a total institution is? Is it school, government, church, or prison? This is out of socialization. Socializacja. Right, so this is prison, right? Because you go into prison, you're under the control of a specialized group, COs in this case, and you have to learn completely new social norms. All right. Okay, global transmission of American values and American business culture became synonymous with, is it commodification, McDonaldization, corporatization, or globalization? Right, American values and American business culture is McDonaldization, right? Okay. Okay, what kind of deviance are illegal gambling, prostitution, and drug use examples of? Are they victimless crimes, self-report crimes, harmless crimes, or individual crimes? Right, these are all victimless crimes, right? Because, I mean, people may self-report that they've engaged in them, but they're victimless crimes, right? Because in the case of illegal gambling, you and your bookie are both consenting, right? You both want to be there for some reason. Prostitution, you know, you and the prostitute, both, in theory at least, are consenting. And what's the last one? Drug use, right? You are using drugs of your own free-ish will. No one is forcing you to do it. And so there's no victim to talk about here. Alrighty. The following image is an example of which of Mead's stages? Is it pretending, developing cultural standard, playing complex games, or imitation? Right, so this is pretending. Okay, it's not playing complex games because they're just basically, it's not imitation because it's not like a baby babbling, right? And it's not playing complex games because there's not multiple roles going on. They're just, in that image, they're just kind of playing house. Okay. I don't remember what the other one was, but it was nonsense. Which term refers to the flow of labor, capital, information, and commodities across borders? Is this imperialism, transnationalism, localization, or globalization? Right, this is globalization, right? This is, you know, goods, labors, capital, information across borders. All of these things is, you know, the spread of global capitalism. All of that describes the spread of global capitalism and capitalist products. Okay, excuse me. I'm not bored, I'm just tired. Intermediate globalization theory states that globalization started, is it 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 125 years ago, or 30 to 40 years ago? This actually could have two answers. And I would probably make this double answer on a test. So, 125 years ago, right, kind of the 19th century, potentially, you know, I might also accept 500 years ago because this is like, you know, the beginning of the European conquest of the Americas. or colonialism, imperialism, all of that stuff. Those are both kind of correct answers. So both green and red are more or less correct, although only green gets credit. I'm sorry. Oh, come on. There we go. It works again. It lost connection for 4 seconds. And then broke. Because something is wrong. Okay. Internal characteristics of poor nations, right? Why are they not developing? They're not like rich nations. I'm sorry about the bug. It's only because the internet in here is borky. All right. The following refers to semi-serious acts of deviance subject to institutional control. Is that a consensus crime, a social diversion, social deviation, or a conflict crime? Oh. I'm going to drop this and dent it. Right, so it's semi-serious, right? It's not fully serious. It's not serious enough that you're going to get a criminal penalty, but it has some institutional control, right? This is your ponytail in the 1960s if you're a dude in a high school. Okay. Heather dyes her hair blue. What kind of deviance are her actions characterized as? Is it a conflict crime, social diversion, consensus crime, or social deviation? Oh, Heather, every year. Right, this is just social diversion, the least serious form. All righty. Which of the following terms refers to crimes such as copyright infringement and embezzlement? Is it street crimes, victimless crimes, white-collar crimes, or office crimes? Right, these are white-collar crimes because they're usually done by office workers wearing white-collared shirts, or at least historically that was the case. All right, S. Nice. What is this image an example of? Is it globalization, regionalism, nationalism, or globalization? Sadly, there won't be any images on the exam, but right, that one is clearly localization. Because it's in Israel, the falafel, right? It's a Middle Eastern food brought into McDonald's. All right, just a few left. What would a strain theorist say is the main cause of crime? Strain. The transmission of moral beliefs and goals, labels attached to young people, identifying them as deviant, not being able to achieve desired goals legitimately, or unpleasant, challenging urban living conditions. Ooh, excuse me again. Right, so strain theory. Strain comes because you expect something from society that it cannot deliver to you. All right. And so you turn to crime to get it, right? All right. Which of the following always searches for increased profit and markets? Is it industrial alliances, international labor, industrial capitalism, or international organizations? Basically, why globalization happened. Okay. In which of the following theories does modernization theory have its roots? Is it postmodernism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, or functionalism? Right, obviously, right, that's functionalism. That's this idea that, non-functional institutions are the reason for poverty in developing countries, right? That's basically the case. Okay. All right. Which of the following terms refers to crimes such as robbery and assault? Is it office crime, street crime, victimless crime, and or white-collar crime? I have a box of salt in my car for no reason, and I'm still waiting to get pulled over so I can, say, "I'm sorry, officer, I have to assault you." I don't know why, that just makes me laugh. Street crime, right? You got that one right. Okay. 4 questions left, and we got 4 minutes, so we should be okay. All right, which of the following characterizes complex industrial societies? Is it strict social control and high conformity, strict punishment for non-conformity, widely shared social norms, or less strict social control and low conformity? Okay, less strict social control, low conformity. Because you're all dispersed, you don't know each other, right? You're anonymous in an industrial society, so there's less social control and low conformity. Which of the following do most sociologists not consider as a source of globalization? Someone asked this as well. This is technology, politics, economics, or culture. Three minutes, 2 questions, I should be okay. There you go, culture. Again, culture is one of the products that globalization sells. Okay. A modernization theorist would likely recommend for an underdeveloped country, open a network of birth control clinics, close foreign military bases, limit foreign direct investment, or renegotiate foreign debt. Ooh, that's a hard question. Yes, it is, right. One of the things that modernization theories say is that one of the reasons poor countries are poor is because they lack self-control in having children. So you would want to open a network of birth control clinics. Alrighty. If the NHL institute rules against violence in hockey, how will that action define violence? Is it as a consensus crime, social deviance, a conflict crime, or social diversion? Da, da, da. It's deviance, right? Because if you break that rule, you might get suspended or get a penalty. So that would be social deviance. Okay, that's it. And I'm sorry again, I forgot to bring prizes. Good job to the winners. Hello, just give me half a second here.